People once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes, something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it, and the soul can't rest. Then sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back to put the wrong things right. So, you guys know I love Lady Death and the world of Chaos and Coffin comics, but I, like many of you, have other stories that I've dived into and enjoyed over the years. And if I'm being completely honest, I've observed that the stories that I tend to gravitate towards are tales of revenge. Or at least they start off that way, and then grow with the character or change into something else completely. But the tale of a troubled protagonist experiencing some of the most brutal horrors and harsh pain that the world or universe will try to beat them down with, and then only to have them still continue to strike back with such ferocity, with every fiber of their being and against all odds. It's just everything I absolutely love and usually can't resist. And it's these stories that follow me in all media, ranging from the 1970s blaxploitation films like Coffin or Superfly to some more recent stuff, things like Machete, Kill Bill, John Wick, Afro Samurai, Oldboy. Yes, I'm kind of a cinephile. And for comics or manga, these could be things like Hack Slash, Berserk, Fist of the North Star, Sad Girl Psycho Baby, Razor. But how could I leave out one of the most iconic tales of sorrow, pain, and yes, of course, revenge? I'm of course talking about James O'Barr's The Crow. But before I get all carried away, if you enjoy what we do here at The Reckoning and enjoy tales of revenge, dark fantasy, Lady Death, purgatory, maybe a little Kagurabachi in the future, but we will just have to see. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, click the bell as well, and go ahead and give this video a like, so that way you can continue to get notified when we have some more content headed your way. I can't thank you all enough for the support you give, and for now, let's begin. So at the time of this video, I am probably going to be seeing the newly released 2024 Crow film this weekend, starring FK Twigs and Bill Skarsgård. Now, to be honest, upon its first trailer, I had mixed feelings about the film. I'm not gonna lie, but I've become more excited as we are approaching its release, and so let's hope it's an awesome film. But all that being said, I know you all saw the title of this video already, and so just wanted to preface that this is more of a quick, the more you know kind of video, and unfortunately not an in-depth rundown of The Crow, which I'm definitely going to be covering in the future, or the crossover mentioned in the title between The Crow and Lady Death. The reasoning? Well, mainly it's because Lady Death and The Crow crossover was actually never officially released. But it sounds like at one point it was just so close. I can recall even some of my later Lady Death issues seeing the advertisement on the back pages as coming soon. But again, I just wanted to let you guys know ahead of time, as I didn't want to disappoint anyone, and I do enjoy this character and the amazing original story by James O'Barr, and I also have a good amount of material, things like the Brandon Lee film, and about 5 volumes worth of Crow stories released through IDW. So we will be visiting The Crow in the future sometime very soon. So don't worry. But of course, you know me. Come on, you guys. This is Ace, and I love The Crow and all, but if you give me an opportunity to talk about Lady Death, well, we gonna talk about it, alright? I'm sorry, that's just how it is. No getting around that. So anyways, let's just go over what we know so far, and remember, it's not a lot. So around 2002 would be the time the Crow and Lady Death crossover started to really get some momentum going. And I guess a great place to begin when looking back at this idea would be with the scriptwriter, a man named Dan Jolly. Now, Dan Jolly is still around today, and it appears he has written for things such as G.I. Joe and DC Comics. He has also written novels and dialogue for several video games. And during the times and rumblings of this collaboration between Lady Death and the Crow, Dan had been writing for Chaos Comics, notably 2 Purgatory titles, God Hunter and God Killer, and apparently Dan was the one who really advocated for himself to be given the chance to write the script. As mentioned, he had been working with the character Purgatory and felt quite comfortable with the understanding of the Chaos universe as a whole, and of course was ecstatic to take an iconic and favorite character from the past, like the Crow, and incorporate it into the world of Lady Death. In one of the quotes that I found of his online, he states, "I've been working for Chaos since last summer, writing Purgatory more or less monthly. When I heard the rumor that Chaos had gotten the rights to do the project, I immediately contacted Brian Pulido to let him know how intensely interested I'd be in writing it. I've been a rabid Crow fan since 1991, and the chance to work on James O'Barr's concept along with the flagship character of Chaos was something I couldn't pass. Watch out, 2 nasty Avengers were about to join forces in Lady Death, the Crow." So it sounds like Dan was very excited to create this narrative, and when looking for any information that kind of explained what the story might have been about, Dan gives us some minor insight in another quote. "The basic story is that a photographer named Michael Shaw and his wife Carrie are ritualistically murdered by a twisted magic user. The nature of their deaths and what the magician does then not only resurrects Michael to exact vengeance, but also attracts the attention of Lady Death, who's compelled to put a stop to the mage's activities. The Crow and Lady Death complement each other very well, I think," says Dan. "Lady Death is an avatar of the Grim Reaper, and the Crow-guided revenants also have a link directly to Death, allowing the 2 concepts to fit pretty seamlessly." So essentially that is our look into the story that is publicly known, and while admittedly it's not a lot to go by, I have to agree with Dan in that yes, both characters having a close connection to Death and both beings being supernatural, I think blends the stories together very well. There are so many different routes you could go with this, as Lady Death already being an established avatar for the Grim Reaper would then come to meet the Crow, and maybe we could have dived into the background of how the character Michael Shaw came to defy death and be resurrected, not only for his revenge, but to enact death on the ones that took his and his love's life away. Is this also the Grim Reaper's doing, or is this from another powerful form of death, such as in the case of the character La Muerta and her connection with Santa Muerte? Then there is the question of the villain of the story, this magic user, sorcerer, or mage, or whatever you would like to call it. And whatever might have been his origins or background. Lady Death, being a witch herself, is no stranger to magic usage. Plus, her father was also a powerful and evil sorcerer, even having a family lineage going all the way up to Merlin. Oh, and of course we can't forget Seance, Hell's mage, and maybe he is somehow involved in the couple's demise. Another really cool fact to note is it sounds like the artist was announced as well, and at the time it would have been Romano Moliner, who had penciled several books for Chaos Comics at the time, whether this was Lady Death Untold Tales, several Purgatory books, and even some of the ones that Dan Jolly had written, so it sounds like the team would have had a pretty good understanding and working relationship with each other. Now, of course, the question on people's mind back then and even now would be about any connection with James O'Barr, and or if he also would be involved in the project, seeing as how the Crow is his creation and all. Dan Jolly also comments on this as he states, "O'Barr did not have any direct input into the latest appearance of his creation, but we did have his blessing on it." Jolly continues to state that the creative team has worked hard to make the project a worthy addition to the Crow mythos, as well as an exciting chapter in the saga of Chaos Comics' sword-wielding champion, Lady Death. Crossovers can always be a bit challenging, and sometimes the idea is exciting, but the execution maybe doesn't live up to the expectation, or perhaps characters don't feel right or feel like themselves, or maybe possibly one gets more shine than the other. But Dan really wanted both characters to feel authentic and get equal shine throughout the story. It sounds like doing justice to them both was his priority. I've tried my best to get both characters equal screen time, since that's what Chaos was looking for. They didn't want it to be a Crow story that featured Lady Death or vice versa. The story ought to appeal to both Crow fans and Lady Death fans. That's what I'm hoping for in any case. The project honestly sounds very promising and something I definitely would have picked up if released today. But unfortunately, you guys, that is it. That's everything we know on the project, at least up to this point. Who knows if artwork, like maybe interiors, were done, and I don't know if the script would ever get leaked, but yeah, it's Just disappointing that we didn't get to see this story come to fruition. But maybe there is still some hope for a crossover between Lady Death and the Crow. I mean, Brian and Mike are hard at work over at Coffin Comics, releasing some excellent work and don't seem to be stopping anytime soon. And Brian did post on his Facebook, I think back in 2018, just reminiscing on his fondness of the idea and potential collaboration that was to be. And even asked the Sworn that if there was a good amount of interest that he would also be willing to see about making it happen after all. He was also asked about the collab revival on a Beer with Brian episode, if the collaboration could still happen, and Brian seemed to think so, although not a project maybe in the immediate future, but definitely possible.
I haven't started it, but I'm interested in starting it, so yeah. It's like a different head, you know, like it's so convenient and wonderful. I sit in a room and I write and concoct stuff and put it out there. It's wonderful. It's another head. I guess it's like what I call my afternoon mindset, where it's like, okay, I'm going to go track down the person who's the decision maker in this thing and try to have the substantial conversations to see if this thing is viable and, you know, see how smooth or unsmooth would the process be. Because Eric, let's look at it this way. I really haven't had a boss in forever. So even when you start collabing, it's kind of bosses. So I'm always, the first part of the conversation is this boss going to be fun to play with or not fun to play with? You know, and that's the whole thing for me.
So I guess we will have to just wait and see. Both characters are incredible and have an amazing story and such striking art, and it's just everything we love here at The Reckoning. And that's why I felt that, sure, we don't have much to go on as far as an in-depth story, but I thought it necessary to at least solidify in some way the project's existence, and what better time than now, as we prepare for the new Crow film this weekend. But what are your thoughts on everything we've covered today? I'm curious if any of you are also fans of The Crow, or are you going to see the new movie? Do you love the original film with Brandon Lee? Rest in peace. And of course, let me know if the crossover would have been something you would have been interested in as well. I always love chatting with you guys down in the comments, and I want to thank you so much for everything and all the support you give. Thank you guys so much, and until next time, take care.